Mayors and chambers, business colleagues, all protocols observed. Thank you very much. Let me start by saying that I found the last 24 hours quite stimulating and also quite reconfirming that we all acknowledge what the problems are. There's no doubt about that. I think we all acknowledge, and it's been repeated by many people over the last 24 hours, that we're the second biggest contributor to the country's GDP, and the importance of the role that we are playing and the role that we can continue to play. And I think that's really good. I must say that yesterday, similar to the Premier, Chris's presentation from Investec was thought-provoking, but as somebody that runs on the treadmill every day in industry, I also thought it was very understated. I know what's happening in our business, and the auto sector is always a really good indicator to the national economy and GDP contribution. And I can say that there is a really, really strong demand out there. And I can see that demand across all sectors. And the challenge that we've been talking about for the last 24 hours is how do we fulfill that demand across the various sectors. I think we're all clear, and it's been well articulated over the presentations, what the challenges are. And our challenges, many of them started a long time ago. More recently, we've had COVID, the civil unrest, and some of the challenges. There's been a lot of talk about governance, corruption, safety, and security. And I think that's all clear. I think what was also really clear, and it's come through not just in the presentations and the discussions we've had, but it's come through in the last 22 months, that as a province, both from a provincial, city leadership, and big business, and small business, we have extreme resilience to tackle any problem that's put in front of us. We heard this morning and we heard yesterday from the Premier, and the note I made is there are no shortage of catalytic projects in this province to stimulate the economy. If we just reflect back over the last 24 hours, I don't think we've spoken at all about tourism. We've spoken about bricks and mortar and things like that. If we tap into the tourism, which is a whole nother discussion, what can this province do? So there's no shortage of catalytic projects at all. If I look and say, well, what are the key drivers to realize some of the successes? And it's been mentioned by all the speakers. I'm just giving an oversight now in terms of the recap. I think top of agenda, and it's no different to the discussions that we had with the provincial leadership on the 23rd of August last year. It's safety and security. And we know yesterday and last night, Lieutenant General presented some really solid action plans. And we understand the challenges he faces. But I think we've seen in a very short space of time a lot more confidence around some of the safety and security issues. We know in the last 6 to 8 weeks there's been a lot of talk about possible disruptions on our national arteries. But I think the activity between the SAPs and the group led by Graham and his team working together has really put a message out to some of those people that wanted to create disruptions, is don't mess around in KZN, you're going to get a hiding. And that was really evident. Touch wood, we can carry that momentum through and really stay on top of it. But I do believe we're getting really strong progress there. Last night, the Minister spoke about operational trust and strategic collaboration. And he posed the question is, what is operational trust? And how do you know when you have operational trust? I also reflected last night back to the meeting that I co-chaired with the Premier on the 23rd of August last year, shortly after the civil unrest, where a similar audience, and many of you were present, spoke about what happened in July and where we are going to. And if you'd have asked the question on the 23rd of August, what is operational trust? I think people, MEC, you were there, people would have thrown things at each other. Last night, I think we could have a discussion about it. And that operational trust is starting to galvanize now, but there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. Something I also took away from the Minister's discussion last night is, he said we need to, as individuals, and the individuals in this room collectively can make a difference in this province. we need to decide in terms of what is our priority, self-interest or societal interest. We have to answer that as individuals. I can't answer for you, and you can't answer for me. But we really need to decide what is our priority, individual interest or societal interest. And I hope we all come to the same answer. I want to give the other two speakers the opportunity to also summarize and leave some elements for them. But to summarize, I think we can all agree that we need a collective leadership. I'm confident standing up here, elected to lead the Durban Chamber, but also as an executive leading one of the big multinationals in the province, that there is no lack of commitment coming out of the business industry. And I know that the provincial and national and city leaderships and municipal leaderships that sit here, also, I think we all share the same vision. We all want to go in the same direction. So there's no reason why we can't move on together. I know personally that there's a very, very strong demand across all sectors in our province for the products that are made in this province. Our job and our challenge is to satisfy that demand. If we don't satisfy that demand, someone else is going to come along and take it. Last night, the Minister spoke about it. Several speakers spoke about it yesterday, the Africa Free Trade Agreement. I'm a very optimistic type of person, and I believe that we can solve anything, but I'm also a realist. I want us to all think about the threat of the Africa Free Trade Agreement. Let's not kid ourselves. There are other economies in Africa that have the same dreams as us, and that if we don't seize the opportunities, those other economies in Africa will come and take them away from us. We need to understand that. I don't want to be doom and gloom. That's the reality of it. I look after 2 plants, one in Ghana and one in Kenya as well. I know what those small areas are doing, and they're aggressive. So we need to consider the risk of that. In closing, the big question is, well, where to from here? I know Moses is going to also propose, and so is the MEC. I want to put my thoughts on the table about where to from here. I think we all understand what the potential is. We all understand what the blockages are. And in our own words, I think it would be safe to say that we are facing a crisis in the province, an economic crisis. But we've been through crises before. And my one proposal is, of course, we've got the Growth Coalition, we've got the chambers, we've got the 8 asides, bringing everything and being that conduit. We've got the KZN Economic Council that also plays the oversight role, the scorekeeper of where we're going in economic progress. I want to propose the following for us to take away and think about. When COVID hit us in March of 20, in the province very quickly, along with national, a command centre was set up to manage the COVID. And if I look at how business and the provincial government interacted and made quick decisions around COVID and what we needed to do through that command centre, because it was a crisis, it went really quickly. Several days after the 6th of July, a command centre between the provincial government, the cities, the provincial leadership and the businesses was put together, and we had a virtual command centre to manage that crisis. I'm really proposing with the right players that we have an economic, and let's not call it crisis, but building, whatever you want, command centre that gives some oversight into some of the challenges that we're having, that will drive it. Because if we have the mindset that it's a crisis, we'll move quickly and we'll break through quickly. I'm not saying the other interventions are not working. The other interventions are really good and really beneficial. But we need this crisis command centre that drives the economic recovery in this thing. I want to close off by using how I get up every morning and what I try and use to motivate myself. And everybody talks about purpose, but I think it's really applicable to the cities that we live and work in within the province and the province itself. There are 2 things that I always challenge people. The first one, and my apology goes out before I say it to the Forestry Association. I'm always challenging people. What are we buying or what are we dealing in? Are we dealing in florists or forests? And we need to decide, are we managing a florist here or are we managing a forest? Florist, the flowers are dead in 4 days, right? There's no long-term benefit, and if there's any florists here, I'm sorry. But the forests, we plant the seeds today, and future generations reap the benefits of the forest. And as a province, we need to be a business leadership and a political leadership that says, we're building forests here. Guys, it's an analogy, so don't get carried away. Eh? And the third one, and one of my mentors and coaches and the person that I look up to is the president of Global Toyota, Akio Toyota. And he has a very simple philosophy that he leaves with us every opportunity he can get. Because as Toyota, we don't recognize that we're the best. There's always people better than us. And our thought process in our business, he tells us every time he has the opportunity, please consider the 3 I's. The first one is to imitate. So let's steal from other areas that are working really well with our eyes what is good, and let's implement it in this province. Imitate, because when we imitate, we can do it quickly. The second one is to improve. What we've imitated or what we've got, let's improve on. And the third one, and our sponsors today and last night, MTN, talk about it, let's innovate. And then as a province together, collectively, I'm confident we can do anything. Thank you very much.
Applause. I will now request co-chair, Mr. Tembe, to come up. Please give him a big round of applause.
Thanks, Neville. Nigel has already spoken on behalf of business. I'm going to give my allocation to the MEC. Thank you.
I suppose I could say the Premier is about to speak next. He's going to say everything. Thank you very much. I think protocols observed. I've identified some 22 points which came up. The idea was to reflect and propose resolutions, so to speak. Most of which have come up strongly, some of which came up peripherally, and one or two which didn't come up at all, but I think are important. So I think everyone's spoken repeatedly about the security issue, and I'm not going to go into detail, but I think the resolution should reflect that as a key priority and endorse Lieutenant General Mkunazi's plan, reaffirm the platforms that have been created for regular engagement, and I think there are platforms that have been created at different levels, including at government level, and where MEC Nkunieni leads. I think the integrated approach between the South African Police Service, the Metro, and private security. Also with Graham's initiative there, it requires an integrated approach, including the use of technology. And I think just to reaffirm the commitments we've made with regard to the towers and some use of technology as a pilot with regard to DeFi. I think what perhaps did not come out strongly enough is to elevate the theft, vandalism, and sabotage of infrastructure as a key economic crime, which must then find expression in the way the police deal with it, with either special, a dedicated task team. It can't be an ordinary case that gets allocated to an ordinary detective who's got 150 other dockets to deal with it in a month. So that's what I would propose. I just want to add, and unfortunately Lieutenant Mkunazi is not here. Oh, he's here. Yeah, I just want to add General, that we appreciate the work that's being done. Not many people know what you went through as well in July. And I'm sure you won't mind me saying what you said in one of our critical engagements. Having regard to all the weaknesses and the failures have been expressed at many levels, and I'm sure the President's going to probably speak about it again in April, when he appears before I think he's appearing before the Human Rights Commission, that you have to decide, with the conditions that I am facing, I have to decide which battles, I have to accept which battles I'm going to lose. I don't know if you recall those words, Lieutenant General. And within those constraints, you won many battles, and nobody talks about that. I mean, if you ask, why was the pavilion not touched? It's not that it wasn't attempts made. There were repeated attempts, wave after wave, as I understand it. And it required special dedicated effort, coordinated effort, led by Lieutenant General Mkunazi, to ensure that he's still standing today. And that's repeated. I can, in many, many instances. Of course, we will talk about the failures. Also, the word resilience has repeatedly come up. And in that week or the days as the unrest unfolded, and we recognized the key strategic issues, which was reopening the N3 and N2. And even then, that was not going to be enough because the roads are open, but you don't have fuel running. There's no point. I don't know, Nigel was part of the meetings with the fuel industry, coordinating the supply of fuel to restore the supply of fuel. We were heading towards an even bigger catastrophe with regard to food insecurity. The roads were closed, no fuel. Within a matter of days, we were heading for a massive food insecurity problem. But it's because of the resilience that we keep talking about, that behind the scenes, many people were working to mitigate that risk and restore the supply lines as we did. So, Lieutenant General, you and your team were integral to that recovery, and we want to record that and express our appreciation. The second point is around the business forums. I think everyone has articulated it. We're drawing a clear line. Mafiosa, or mafiosi, criminal conduct, no compromise, no engagement, law must take its course. But we're also recognizing that many of the business fora represent genuine entrepreneurs who are getting into an organized formation to request economic empowerment. Those we will engage with in good faith and will seek to open up opportunities. The disaggregation of that is important, and we must be able to be very clear about it. I think the whole issue of cleanliness, I'm not going to go into that. That should be captured quite strongly, but that goes together with basic services generally. Water and electricity are key economic issues. I think that must find expression in the resolution. Yes, when we as political representatives or public representatives dealing with communities, we're dealing with it as a social issue with homes and families. But it's a key economic issue. And I think I want to identify and lift, with regard to electricity, Msunduzi as having peculiar and key issues that we need to deal with. An example with water would be Ugu. I can share with you, I slept at home last night and I got up with no water, and there hasn't been water for 3 days. So it's a bit of a challenge. Urbanization, I think we didn't give enough expression to that, especially with the Tegwini. Umbela, I think the last time I looked, 25% of the Tegwini's population now lives in informal settlements. Digest that. That's a massive number which requires a very, very deep strategic approach and intervention. So with regard to those Msunduzi and Ugu, I'm recommending that we resolve that it requires an intervention beyond what is currently happening. Then with regard to the catalytic projects, I think that has been covered. I think we're endorsing the rapid and aggressive implementation of the catalytic projects. The issue of the bulk infrastructure costs emerged clearly as a problem. And while there are some proposals with regard to bridge financing which have not been unpacked completely, but my understanding, Mr. Mbele in particular, is that the city is open to a proposal where the developer will bear the costs, and then not only in eThekwini, but in many other municipalities, you must be open to the proposal where the developer will bear the costs, but then recover it through whatever mechanisms that we can agree upon, including in Msunduzi, for example, there was the proposal, Melanie, if I recall correctly, that they will fund some of the infrastructure and set it off against the rates that would be due over a period of time. Now, we should be open to creative proposals such as that. But apart from that, I think overall, and I think the Premier will probably speak to it, it was informally discussed with the Minister as well, that there's a critical mass of projects or infrastructure requirements which we simply cannot fund immediately. Now, that's a crisis because the infrastructure issues are not just about new developments. The infrastructure is battling to cope with current requirements. And we then need to package that and and lobby strongly for a once-off kind of intervention. So I think that's what we want to propose as a resolution. Number 6 is the Go Durban, and we've heard the progress report. So we'll have to monitor that quite closely and perhaps request the provincial government to also exercise some sharper oversight and put more political weight to a resolution of that outstanding issue. Number 7, I'm glad Nigel's raised the issue of tourism, which I think didn't get sufficient expression in these engagements, and perhaps there aren't enough tourism players in the delegation. But we want to reaffirm it as a key pillar of our KZN economy. I mean, it's currently contributing 10% to the GDP of the province, and we simply cannot neglect it. But I want to make an appeal. Let's not have some self-defeating lamentations. Yes, it is true that there was the wastewater treatment plant failure, which resulted in the pollution down the Umgeni River. And yes, it is true that there has been the perception of whether KZN is a safe destination. But we all expected to be leaders and marketers of the province. So, for example, if you take that Umgeni pollution, yes, it was a bad incident, but it doesn't mean all the beaches in the eThekwini or KZN were affected. KZN remains with 9 blue flag beaches. Blue flag is the highest standard internationally recognized. So we must be able to balance our criticism by marketing our strengths, which are quite considerable. In December, I think for the domestic market, we still performed the best. Our overall occupancy rate rose to 65%, and in certain key areas like eThekwini and the key holiday spots, it went up as high as 90%. So we need to be able to build on that. It's not a lost cause. Our tourism sector, we are only 600 km from Gauteng. Cape Town can't compete with us on that geographic distance. We still have beautiful natural products from our beaches to our wetland parks, our nature reserves, the mountains, and historical sites. So what I'm pleading for is that, yes, we have challenges, but don't let those challenges overwhelm us to the point that we start exuding complete negativity. And what we're seeing in the industry is different to what we sometimes articulate. ICT and 4IR, I think many people spoke about it. I just want to summarize it as that if you look at the stats, we are behind in connectivity, if you compare us with the other provinces. So we want to commit to an aggressive rollout of connectivity. Yes, the broadband program is part of it, but the SA Connect program, which is funded by the state, is not going to be enough. So we have an Indaba planned. I think the Premier's office has set a date for next early April, and we need to pull all our private sector players into that indaba to create. The funding will be there if we have a proper plan. Popularize our economic recovery plan. I'm not sure many people know about it and the detail of it. I keep saying that we don't want to spray and pray in our approach to it. And let me be honest and blunt about it, that many of you quite naturally would have a driven interest in the sector from which you come. Now, we've got to have a collective approach to it. We have 14 sectors, which is not cast in stone, we can re-examine it, but we're a diverse economy. We must look at that as a strength. And as much as we have leading lights in the automotive sector, we must be able to drive the other sectors as well. I mean, agriculture, is anyone here can really say they're representing agriculture? Except for the forestry people, which is debatable where you fall. But, eh? Mondi, yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. But the agriculture sector, I'm sorry, I'm going to pose this as a challenge to organized business. I don't see commercial agriculture really involved in our engagements, and we know that they probably constitute 60 to 70% of the entire agriculture in the province. As a government, we are battling to deal with those who need to be affirmed, the subsistence farmers, the smallholding farmers whom we are trying to elevate to a commercial status. But the really big commercial guys are not with us in this endeavor, and I think we should raise that as a challenge. We didn't have time, Premier, to talk about RASET and the radical agrarian socio-economic transformation. Now, let me make this particular point now, because I need to be wrapping up. Let's not fall victim to those who vulgarize radical economic transformation. Let's embrace economic transformation. Once you understand it, and you know the tasks that we are setting ourselves, you'll find that there's everything in your interest to embrace it and help it succeed in a logical and systematic way. So we reject those who want to vulgarize it and even criminalize it. But if we understand, for example, RASET and how it takes the subsistence farmer to a smallholding farmer, to eventually a commercial farmer, and how critical to that exercise is market access, then, Graham, SPA is critical to saying you will give offtake contracts or take stuff that's emerging from that particular sector. And that applies across the board. I think the energy sector is emerging, and I'm not going to spend time on that. Transnet must be driven. There's a lot of time being spent on that, so that will find expression in the resolution. But also, this did not find too much expression, understandably so. But let the township and rural economy also be embraced by all of us. That's critical to the stability that you all are talking. Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi can only do so much. Fundamental stability depends on the overall growth, the inclusive, we all give these words, inclusive economy. So the township and rural economy part must underpin. It's a cross-cutting issue. And wherever your area of operation is, I would plead to say, ask the question, what impact you are having in the township or rural areas around you? What are you doing for eventually for those people in that township or rural area to say, no, this is part of our economy. I have a stake in it. And that's something, as business people, I'm sure you have the ability to do and come up with practical plans, and our job is to support you to achieve that. We didn't speak too much about SAPREF, Premier, but we are worried about the impact of the closure of the refinery. I would like to propose that we support the call by the Premier to National to intervene. There are some bigger issues. We didn't spend time on the fuel industry, the environmental issues, the just transition arguments. That's something we need to have to find time to grapple with and have an argument that we can all embrace. But I want to propose that finds expression in our resolutions. Many have spoken about the free trade area. Nigel has given a warning about a risk. But I would like to suggest, Nigel, that we have the capacity to take them on and compete. Be wary of the risks, but not be paralyzed because there might be those risks. In any ways, paralysis is not an option because you're then going to give them a free run. The Intra-Africa Trade Fair, which took place last year, was an eye-opener for me. And the number of contacts, 40 countries attended. 40 countries from the continent attended. 6 heads of state attended. As a result now, and then the full credit for that work must go to the Premier, because it did in 4 months what normally takes 2 years. Because remember what happened was that Intra-Africa Trade Fair was supposed to have been in Rwanda. And everybody quite correctly applauds Rwanda for the work that it's doing. But the truth is Rwanda could not pull it off and came to the organizers and said, look, we're not going to make it. And they had 2 years to do it. African approached the Premier, and the Premier took up the challenge because you could see the opportunity that it gave in the middle of COVID to change the mood and get things moving again. So it was a success, and it opened up doors to the point where African countries are now approaching us as a province, approaching the office of the Premier to say wanting to engage on economic issues. And I'm sure, Premier, you don't mind if I say that, you said it, you're going to DRC within a few weeks. And I think there's going to be an opportunity for a business delegation, and we probably need to join the Premier on that particular visit. I think the catalytic projects have been spoken about. What has not been, the SCM side has not been dealt with enough. And we need to share with you our frustrations on the procurement framework. And there's a new procurement bill coming in, and how that comes through, and we must all understand and embrace the changes that we are seeking to see in that, because it causes a lot of frustrations and the inefficiencies, the delays in procurement. There are risks we accept, but a lot of the delays also is a result of the complicated procurement framework that we have as, having regard to the objectives that we want to reach. I think the issue of asset care, better collaboration, I think that will all find expression. National support for bulk infrastructure, Premier, you were out when I mentioned that. The 110 pump stations, I think somebody spoke about that. I think it was from Tonga Tulet, the 110 pump stations in the Tegwini. I think that needs to be lifted for some dedicated attention. We didn't speak too much about recycling and waste-to-energy projects, but there's huge opportunity there. And perhaps we need to lift with regard to water, we need to lift the recycling potential with regard to water. We were dealing with people from Norway and Sweden. 80% of their wastewater gets recycled. We are losing 50% of our pure water. So I think there's huge work to be done there. Dual governance, I think that's a big issue for Tegwini. If 65% rural. I know the mayor has been very brave in confronting this issue. And all those people with massive houses in rural areas are getting away with murder. If you look at the one striking example, as you come from Mkababa on the interchange before the Sapi mill, I mean, those are mansions which they were in Mshlanga would be 10 million rand, I think. But they're not paying rates. So that's an issue that needs to be confronted as well. Prioritization of the reinvigoration of the ATA side, I think that must be taken as a priority for our intervention. So finally, I think, let me say, I think this is the beginning, the end of the beginning of a process. There must be no illusions about that, but I think our collaboration and in the social compacting exercise, I'm very inspired that we will take it to greater heights and demonstrate a patriotic provincial effort that can become a benchmark for other provinces. Thank you very much.
very much, MEC, for those words. Mr. Tembe for delegating to Mr. Ward. Thank you very much. We are now close to the end of our program, but just a few announcements. One, if you have not surrendered your key, please, if you could do so urgently, if you were living in the estuary, so that if you can please assist. Number two is that MTN at the end, so after the vote of thanks, MTN will just do a quick draw. They had some prizes outside, so that'll take no more than 3 minutes of your time. So if you want to get a prize, so just prepare yourself for that. Just before we request our Honourable Premier to come and give us his address, are there any pressing questions or matter that you'd like to raise? I don't want anyone to walk away feeling like they have not had a chance to say something. Okay, I'm happy. Everyone is covered. Everyone is covered. Now it gives me great pleasure to request the Honourable Premier Zikalala, to then come and address us with closing remarks. Hussein.
Thanks. Thanks. Thank you. Let's be seated. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Firstly, once again, let me thank MECs who are here. MEC Pillay, MEC Mavimbela, MEC Sbiya, and MEC Shomuga. Let us thank the HODs who are here. We know we brought two, Kontwane and Mr. Sibande. All CEOs from public entities. And I think we must give the government a big round hand of applause. Firstly, I think it's for a first time, Mr. Tembe, that you will have the minister addressing a dinner and staying over in a session. And Brooks, I'm sure you can confirm. But possibly it's also a first time that the Premier will stay from the beginning till the end. And I've been part of this engagement. It's the first time that you will have MECs, two staying from the beginning till the end and others participating on the following day. So this is how government is responding to the call of this social compact. In the preparation for this meeting, which was held 2 weeks ago, it was Friday, I'm sure that Neville and Andrew can confirm that government was the first to arrive and then the business joined us when we were there. So I just emphasizing those points so that you understand the passion that we've put on economic growth, redistribution, and creation of jobs. But equally, I wish to thank the Commissioner, Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi, firstly for being here, secondly for the presentation made, but for the relationship he established with stakeholders, including the business sector. And that deserves a big round hand of applause. And finally, let me thank the Growth Coalition, the co-chair in particular, as well as Andre. We are grateful, Mr. Tembe. We want to thank you. And Mr. Kipiela. Here, there are CEOs of chambers, but there are CEOs of international companies, SPA, International, and others. and therefore we value your contributions. We are grateful to MTN, not NetBank, MTN. We want to thank you sincerely for hosting us. And having said that, I think there are key issues that we can't conclude without emphasizing that we've agreed on. The first is that, I'm reminded that we have mayors here. The mayor of this city, the mayor of Umsunduz, and the mayor of Kokstad. And we value their participation. So firstly, we agree that ours should be a pragmatic and decisive developmental state which focus on implementation, and therefore we need to work in a different way. Ensure implementation, implementation, and implementation. Two key areas of focus is to improve security through ensuring that we are coordinated, and that coordinated approach presented by Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi is quite impressive but needs implementation. So if you are in an industrial park or in a mall or a particular precinct, you have SAPS, you have Metro, then you have private security companies. All of these are about security. Now, the concept presented by General Mkhwanazi appealed to the business sector to say, stop acting individually. If you've got few outlets in a business, you can have your own securities, but a coordinating approach is important. To have one who is coordinating, and that one must serve and communicate with the district or the region or the police station there, but also the metro. And that coordinating approach, I think, must be cemented. And I think we will want to emphasize that point. The second point is we must decisively deal with corruption. The fact that you will have to pay to be paid or to pay for your application to be processed. We committed that we will have a nerve center where you report, and we're going to ensure that details are given to the chambers within the next 2 weeks. We will do so. Secondly, the next point, we agreed that as per the presentation, and I said this to the economist, and I must also say it to Khona noma esehambile, ukuthi not all political analysts are politicians. One point he said, which was key and fundamental, is that development is around cities. If the city is vibrant, it then be able to ensure that it leads development. And I think we take that point serious, and therefore appeal to all mayors and officials to play their role. Yes, it is good to be coordinated by the province, but the fact remains that the implementation happens in our municipalities. If the project is driven by the province, well and fine, but push the province as the municipality. While he commended Mayor Mtolo for his role in dealing with the July unrest. I want to commend him for pressurizing. Mayor Mtolo can pressurize you. He can send you, you know. He is not equal to one man I know called Mtititi. That one is perfect. Because Mtititi can send you 3 SMSs or WhatsApp a day. But I think that kind of leadership that pressurize, say, this is what must happen, let it happen and make it happen. And even use strong words, you are failing us if you are not doing this. And I think we need that kind of a local government. And I think we must promote that in all municipalities. Key intervention, it's alternative energy. I think we were clear on that. Our team led by MEC Pillay, MEC Nkonyeni, MEC Kokta, MEC Hlomuga, we've assigned them, then we agreed that I think by April, they will start giving us a feedback, having started the work and having engaged with municipalities, especially the metro and all secondary cities. The economy of the growth of this province lies around N2 and N3 in particular. And therefore, working on those corridors and those secondary cities is important. So, within the next month, before the end of April, I'm sure we'll get the first report on this issue of energy. We have an advantage of using the fact that municipalities can generate up to 100 megawatts without tight regulations from national. And therefore, we need to explore that with agency. And I think I support the view that says, let's prioritize areas that create economy, and therefore all industrial parks and areas such as the reservoirs. So I think we must be together on that. Next point is, there was a good presentation for eThekwini. I think it's a good presentation. But one point in that presentation, there is no major project that talks to the inner city development, except the promenade. Now, promenade is good. Kahle hle eThekwini usuba ngcono umusuka ko morning side, umusuya ngasolwandle, you go down. But I'm sure Mr. Mbele and Philip, because we are of the same age, asihlukene kakhulu. Now, we'll agree ukuthi uma sifika eThekwini nje umunethuba ngomgqibelo. Ayindawo yokuqala obuya kuyo nje bekuba iworkshop. And the workshop ubuthola into eziningi ezihlukahlukene ezimnandi. Iworkshop yona beyisente phambili. Ngaphandle kwe-workshop lapha emapaki, ubukwazi ukuthi uyihlalele nje. Whether uwedwa noma uhamba nohamba naye, kodwa ubukwazi ukuyihlalela. And the fact that the inner city development is not a priority to be among the catalytic projects tells you that we will allow the decay. And I don't think we should surrender and allow the decay of the inner city. And I think we must work on that. We have said that we have a capital city, and let's agree that there was nothing presented specifically on investment and on the development of that inner city. We've just spoken about maybe dealing with infrastructure, road, water, and therefore we must maintain light, those things. I think MEC Pillay, as a champion, but together with MEC for COGTA, we may need an urgent day with the district and the city. A day. A district and the city, just to look on their plan. An afternoon part of that should include the business sector. The morning part can be 4 hours on our own, and then after that we meet with key stakeholders, in particular the business sector. And I think we will need to do so, and the session should not be a theoretical one, but should be based on operation, what is happening and how are we going to implement and change around Umkungundlovu, the Pietermaritzburg. And we can't leave public works in that engagement, because I believe that public works is one of those contributing either to the decay or to the upliftment of the city. I don't know what role are they playing, but we will need them there. And I think MEC Pillay will have to lead us in doing that together with Mayor Tibol. We've taken note, and I think at a policy level, I'll support the minister, but expand from that point. He said we must fight for banning import of the second-hand cars or the used cars. And I think it's a quite serious point. In fact, from where I stand, we need to just ban all import of scrap metals and be decisive on that. And I think it's a policy we must take forward in quite a decisive approach. We've spoken about productivity, both in the public and private sector. And I think Mr. Gumede tried to provoke our understanding of this, and I think we agree around the principles he articulated. 1, planning. 2, budgeting. 3, execution. So that's one line that marks the coordination part. But secondly, accountability and consequence management. So if you are talking about consequence management, Mr. Kipiela spoke about the intervention by the acting city manager of eThekwini, which was good. But from my point, when you deal with consequence management, is that then what did he do about that person who was supposed to implement and didn't implement within that first 2 weeks, 14 days, and then was given the last 7 days, and then things were implemented? What happened to that official? And that is accountability and consequence management. Look, when things are complex, we must not drop them down. We must strive to lift ourselves to complexity, and we are leaving that space to become general. We end up discussing things that are too general, that should be just solved at a low level. And you find that because of the lack of consequence management, even things that are not so strategic get elevated. We shouldn't be having a problem of processing EIAs or water use licenses to a point that that issue is discussed at this level. It should be solved by a technical team of the Department of Environmental Affairs, one-stop shop, and a relevant municipality. Solve within 3 months, finish. But because there is someone who will not do his or her work, the matter is now elevated because it's critical, it's a problem. Now we're all getting stuck here. Instead of talking about key investments, we must talk about this bottleneck. it is because of partly the lack of consequence management. There is someone who's supposed to do his job or her job. Because of derogation of duty, that person does nothing, and the matter is taken as if it is a policy matter, yet it's an operational matter that needs to be implemented. And I think we must listen to that presentation. That slide presented by Mr. Kumete on what is a perception of the investors about Durban needs to be taken further. And I think, Mr. Mpele, I will talk to the mayor. That slide, you need to discuss it in the exco of eThekwini. That slide, if we are serious, you need to discuss it. Yes, those are people, these are cities you compete with, but issues they raise are alarming about us. And we can't leave them unattended. And I will also request to have that presentation, Mr. Kumete, especially that slide. So we need to take up those issues of coordination. I think the other point is intergovernmental relations. We must work on the issue of the relationship of spheres of government. So it's a relationship between spheres, but even within a sphere. Look, we can't be here to discuss the problem of the Department of Transport and the eThekwini municipality. No, that issue of how they standardize their plans and all of that, really. There is a municipal manager, there's HOD, and then this forum can't. So I think we need to be decisive in these issues. But also within the departments and within the city, I think we need to ensure that all plans talk to each other. The left hand must always know what the right hand is doing. We need a comprehensive government plan on the bulk infrastructure. If there is one thing that will delay economic growth but sustain unemployment, if something will sustain unemployment, it's the issue of bulk infrastructure. And the plight presented by Mr. Stoll need to be taken serious. I know that if you are in government, you get concerned if the official is telling the truth about your dire situation. And I was seated there, and MEC Pili was saying, hey, this is a too religious presentation because he was quite lamenting that in some cases we don't have enough money. But we need to package all of these projects, develop a comprehensive presentation, and then engage with government. Some of these could be done by departments. Some of these could be done by the national government. Let me make one example. So we were seated discussing this issue of agri-parks. It said, how are we going to fund? We must get infrastructure fund, we must do a presentation. I just said, okay, fine, but you've got a conditional grant, MEC. So for the first year, just take at least 100 million from your conditional grant. In advance, inform the minister that this conditional grant, we're going to reprioritize, we will use it here. We will use it to build these agri-hubs. And that begin to set the progress. And that's an approach we must use. Let us package these things, sit together. If we need to approach the national government, we must do so. So I believe that eThekwini, Mr. Nkontwana, will be able to package these as well as, especially eThekwini and Umsunduze. Package these needs for infrastructure, the bulk infrastructure. And then you come to present to the Executive Council. Within the next 3 months, we take that presentation to the National Treasury. If We need to front load. Let's front load them, even if they allow us to go and find a way of raising resources. So I will leave that. It's specific. 3 months we get that, and we've got Mr. Nkontwane, and then we must get that from him dealing with Umsunduze as well as the eThekwini. We must go with all of the mayors to engage with national government. If they don't have money, they must allow us to raise money from the private sector and see. I'm saying so because one investor approached us and said, look, allow us to build the bulk infrastructure for ourselves. And then we will pay the reduced tariffs for the next 15 years. And I said, hey, it's something that has not been done. But it needs to be explored. It doesn't mean that if we have not done it, it can't be done. Because one, you are not coming with an alternative. We just say, no, there is no money. There's no money. You don't come with any alternative. So I think in a case like that, we must work together, raise resources, and then front load. If we are to change the province and ensure infrastructure development, we will need that approach. But we have a team that must work with municipalities, and that team is the infrastructure unit in Treasury and the infrastructure unit in the Department of Culture. So for Mr. Nkontwane is to get these two departments and work with the relevant municipalities. By the way, I'm not leaving out others, especially the Ladysmith. We also need to build on trust. And we said this should be an operational trust. And if it is to be like that, it therefore requires that MEC Pillay and Nigel Ward sit together and formalize this concept of an economic command center that Mr. Ward referred to. So we need to discuss how it should be structured, how it should work, what is its relationship with other platforms of government. We've got the asset, we've got the war room on jobs, so we are free, we take the point, it is good. If it is a command center, I believe it's something that will be operational. But I believe it is a coordination of this social compact. It may mean that the private sector second some people into this center, the government second people into this center, and we work together. And I'm sure MEC Pillay will have a time for that, maybe in a week or two, so that when this report, the report of this workshop goes to the Executive Council in the next month, it comes with this concept being one of the clear recommendations that we must move toward having this economic command center. I fully concur that this is a good platform where you should deal with issues at a high level. Then you should have a case at an economic council where all sectors comes together. But you need an arm that look on intervention and driving implementation. So I think we can take that approach in that way. We must also post-COVID and post the unrest undertake the joint promotion tour of ensuring that we attract more investors to the province, focusing to our traditional partners, Europe and the West, but also extending to the East, which will help us to also learn from the Asian tigers, but also access to Africa. You yourself must also be investors to Africa. And I think Chris was quite bold to tell us the truth. He said we are a small economy. South Africa is a small economy. And that's fair. So we must expand to Africa. I think we need a separate and a dedicated session with key tourism operators in the province. I think that is needed. Key tourism operators. Yes, we had the engagement with stakeholders before, but in this case, I talk about key operators in the hospitality sector and those who are promoting KwaZulu-Natal. And I'm sure colleagues in the space will remember my cry of about 4 years that we need provincial government, the municipality, especially of eThekwini, and the industry to come together and have a clear plan to promote KwaZulu-Natal and Durban. We are more dependent now on conferencing than just leisure tourism. And I think we need serious effort on promotion. We appreciate the improved and coordinated approach which have led to national government working with us in a strong way. And I'm sure colleagues, Mr. Tembe and the business community, you'll appreciate that. As I said at the beginning, within the period of 2 months, we have met several times with Transnet. Hence, they came to present here. Hence, as we are now part of the steering committee, but we've met AXA, and there is an interaction with Sandral. And we are seeing now a move to implementation. And therefore, this is a call that we must ensure implementation and implementation with speed. We must ensure tight monitoring from all sides and be coordinated. I wish to end by thanking all of you, but the vote of thanks is coming. I was just giving a reflection broadly and key areas we've agreed on. I thank you, Program Director.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I just want to kick off by doing a few corrections here. In fact, it's one correction. If you look at your programs, it states that that's item number 8, closing remarks by business convener, Mr. Sihle Zikalala, KZN Premier. I think there was a problem there, Andre.
No, that was in anticipation of the support.
You will account later, not now. Yeah. I think that's one. But secondly, this one is now directed specifically to the Premier. The Premier was standing here as a co-chair of Growth Coalition. I'm just making that very, very clearly. So the Premier, when he started, he was actually doing a vote of thanks as a co-chair, thanking, as he articulated clearly. He thanked Pillay, he thanked Mavimbela, he thanked all other MECs and mayors, but he was doing it as a co-chair of the Growth Coalition. To that point, give the co-chair of the Growth Coalition a big, big round of applause. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you will all agree with me if I say we've had a purposeful, rewarding, and a very, very successful workshop. We'll be going back to our workstations back home, very motivated to get our province back on track. We must be known as a winning province where it's easy to do business. I think that message came out quite clearly. I don't intend to repeat what my co-chair has clearly articulated, and I'm not going to be going back to thank the MECs, the HODs, the mayors who are here. I'll probably, at the end of my remarks, thank the business sector, and in particular the Secretariat, who did quite well for organizing this workshop. I just want to make one or two suggestions over and above what my co-chair made. The first one, if possible, I would like Andre and Ms. Tinhlagani Ponkontwana to develop what I will call a delivery matrix. Delivery matrix. It's got to be transparent. We know exactly all the projects we discussed here, all the challenges and opportunities we clearly spelled out. I think we now need to see this in black and white in the form of a delivery matrix. I know of no one who is as articulate as Gontwana, assisted by Andre. I'm sure they will be able to deliver that. I think if we get that right, I think it will address 2 or 3 issues. In fact, 3. The first one, it's a disease. You might not find this word in the dictionary, but I call it excusitis. It's a very, very bad disease where people advance excuses for stuff that can't be done. It will address that. Secondly, it will begin to address the issue of trust quite objectively. If you remember well what the minister was saying yesterday, trust is best addressed by way of doing. You know, if you have been assigned to deliver on specific task, you deliver that. We really think that by working together, and working together really means ensuring that we deliver on the promises. And thirdly, I think it's a strategic way of this delivery matrix. It's a strategic way of addressing the image in KZN, because if we get that right and we get to be known as a province that is on duty, as a province that delivers on the projects, on the promises, you begin to really build your image around that which matters most. We've articulated clearly all the catalytic projects. We now need to know who is responsible for what, and that could be covered in the matrix. Who is responsible for what, by when it should be delivered, and who gets fired if it doesn't happen. For example, we've had Umtagampele, Musampele, telling us about Go Durban, and we sympathize with issues around Go Durban. I'm using that as an example, Musa Mpele. The issue is Mr. Mbele should tell us by when those issues will be resolved. He should give us a date. And we want to see those buses going by that date. We know that he has to talk to the taxi industry, and we accept that, but he needs to commit to a date. When he does that, we really could begin to sit up and take seriously the excuses he's been giving us on this issue. That way, we are triggering what we call in business management by objectives and time frames. Philip, you'll remember that term. I know when you're talking about firing people, you never get any hands. People never clap. But that's how it should be if we really want to get going. I'm now coming to a summary of the vote of thanks. We've thanked the government contingent of the KZN Growth Coalition. It's time for me to really thank the business sector. I've seen many CEOs of companies, I've seen many business people who truly have come from far and wide. We truly appreciate the commitment and the trouble you've taken to be with us. I also want to thank members of the Growth Coalition, all of them in totality, and thank in particular the Executive Committee of the Growth Coalition. I saw Riaz, Pili, Nigel. We work together with the Chamber at the Growth Coalition. The comments, the work that they've been doing to ensure that this program really has the meat which we could eat and take home. It is truly appreciated. On that note, really, I would like us to give Durban Chamber of Commerce a big round of applause. I mentioned the likes of Riaz and many other business people really who've been giving us input. Your prescriptions go towards paying the expenses of the Secretariat, but all of these people I am counting, including myself, we don't even take a cent because we are serving there. In fact, if you are giving of your time, I mentioned Graham, the amount of time he's spending at the Growth Coalition is not being paid a cent. We always believe that if you are truly giving, you must feel a little bit of pain. That's why we don't even want you to pay for our transport. That's the level of sacrifice that all of these business people have been taking over the years. Last but not least, let me go to MTN. MTN, your generosity of spirit, but I've no doubt that we've risen to the occasion by giving you the exposure. Many companies are looking for exposure, but you really have gone beyond the call of duty met at Khumalo. The budgetary constraints that we see among business people, amongst companies, really, it's so huge. For what you've done to make this possible, your contribution was quite phenomenal, and you've been here since yesterday. You truly deserve a big round of applause. Thank you very much. The spirit of camaraderie, as co-chair, I've enjoyed with my co-chair over the years. Really, it's quite legendary. Premier, thank you, thank you, thank you so much for your support. Without delegates, we would not have this workshop. My last wish to you all is to travel safe back home till we meet next year. Thank you.